Good afternoon, everybody. We'll get started here in just a second. How is everyone? Hello. Hi, Isaiah. Hi, John. Hi, Julia. Hello, Dennis. Hi, Emma. Hello, David. Hi, Stacy. Hello, Isaiah. Hi, Lewis. Elizabeth. Jean Carlos. Oh, geez. You on your phone? I see you, but I don't have my list. There are two people logging in with their phones. I gotta get started. Hey, hello, Dennis. Who's on the phone today? I think we had a discussion the first day you're zooming in from work. And then who else? Who are the two phone people, please? Hello, hello, hello.
I'm on my phone.
Yasmin, okay, good. And then, well, David, actually you're showing up. If that was you, David, who said I'm on my phone, you're actually showing up with your name. The reason I ask is what I have are names, basically gray boxes with names, and I have two that say iPhone, and I don't remember the name. You guys get it? So that's one is Jasmine, and so who is the other iPhone? Who's 917 something and 388? Who is that? Unless you can't speak up. And I guess maybe you can't type in the chat room.
Oh, here we go. The unmute didn't work before. No, this is Nathan. Zoom isn't letting me log in with my account that I made before, so I'm just sorting that out first. I'll be on in a second with my name attached to this email number, this phone number.
Appreciate it. Good. Sounds good. Okay. And with that in mind, I'll go a little bit slow. Then I'll slow it down in the next few minutes. All right.
Thank
See if
you.
we can get that sorted out, Nathan. Okay. All right, everybody. So how are all of you, and how are we doing when it comes to our engagement with these initial essays, these foundational essays in pragmatism? How's everybody doing? And did you have a chance to read the first couple essays, Emerson and Peirce? And yes, his name is Peirce, even though it looks like Pierce. And I used to pronounce it Pierce for many years until I had my first real pragmatism classes, and then I was quickly corrected. His name is Charles Saunders Peirce, like a bag, purse. Okay. So how are we with Peirce and Emerson, everyone? Much less William James. Go ahead and be honest. It's the second day. It's the first real day, actually. So I need to know if we've all finished the essays and have questions ready to go and comments ready to go, or if you're still working through them. All right. So I need to know, please. We have a chance to finish the Emerson essay?
I'll say
I haven't, Professor.
No problem, John. Anybody else? What's going on?
And this is me. I'll say both are near and dear to my heart. We read Self-Reliance when I was a junior in high school. And it just went right through me. I said, that's the way to live.
Yeah.
And when I was about the same age as all the rest of the students here, I was in a class at Queens College in which we began by reading these two Peirce essays.
Yeah.
And it was the first philosophy of any sort that I actually thought I understood. So I like them all.
Sounds fantastic. I really appreciate that, John. And yeah, I mean, we'll get a sense here in terms of understanding pragmatism in terms of, arguments, positions, conceptual relations, logical consistency, whichever, and understanding the historical contextualization of pragmatism. So what you get, for example, with, John's, recounting the experience reading this essay, before, something I think is a little bit similar to what many of us feel, as Americans, or let's say, as knowing the ethos or the ethos of this nation, of this country. It's reciprocal in terms of, if you read that today, cool. Somebody appealing to a sense of individuality, somebody urging people to be, nonconformists. It seems pretty much part of the zeitgeist, kind of the postmodern kind of, virtuality, kind of everybody's got a chance to kind of pick and choose their own personal identity and just be different, whatever, right? But you got to keep in mind, this essay was written in I think it was 1830, 1831. Hold on, blanking out for a second. Point is, the essay was written a long time ago, all right? So what you get is this kind of weird sense of the reciprocity of the foundational thinking, the foundational writing, right, of some political system, of some culture, all right, of a society, namely the United States, all right? How that early stuff is feeding into what many of us feel is normative, is, kind of typical about American culture. So then as we grow up in it, then it kind of feeds back into, this is how we ought to think and argue and urge in terms of the values of our particular culture. So all I'm saying here is there's a kind of weird sense of, you read it and it's like, cool. So I can see a long time ago, Emerson was urging people to cherish these values, to think this way and to not to think that way. And then, also as someone who can appreciate nonconformity, individualism, right? Then that kind of leads us into making these arguments, which tend to be somewhat individualistic. I'm talking about classical pragmatism now, all right? Or nonconformist, which is very ubiquitous amongst all kinds of different worldviews and philosophical positions and lifestyles or whatever. All right. Anyway, fantastic comment, John. And the Peirce essays are absolutely foundational for pragmatism. Absolutely. Right. We're going to be getting into some stuff today. Right. You can say a little Hegel, a little Kant, whichever. You can say a little bit of his name was Jonathan Edwards, and he was a famous minister in the United States, extremely popular and considered one of the first kind of very popular public intellectuals. He was a theologian at the time and some of his stuff, while not explicitly pragmatist in a Peircean sense, clearly is feeding into it. Peirce is not, didn't come out of a vacuum, right? So, Kant, Hegel, which Peirce is explicitly referring to in the fixation of belief, he refers to Hegel. Then you have obviously reference to Descartes and Kant in the how to make our ideas clear. But yeah, the Peirce articles are incredibly foundational, are foundational for any understanding of pragmatism. And they're just really innovative for the time. It was so different. And even the style and the tone, is very much established. This kind of original sensibility about American philosophy, very distinctly American, as opposed to deeply continuous with European philosophy. And Peirce and James were very self-aware about that. All right, fantastic. So let me go back to the chat room here. You just joined class last week, so I didn't get it to anything. All right, I appreciate the honesty, Isaiah, but the syllabus is up, and we did talk, like later, did we, Isaiah? You introduced yourself, didn't you? Isaiah, are you there? Wow, okay. I thought we all introduced ourselves. So how late did you join?
Hi, I just joined the class and
I was wondering about you last week. That's right. I see your name exactly. All right.
yes, I got confused. Because I didn't think I was enrolled yet in classes. And then I realized, so I'm Kate, I'm from New York, and I'm very excited to be taking this class. And I'm very looking forward to working with you all this upcoming semester.
Thank you so much, Kate. I appreciate that. Sorry I didn't get to you. I was just going to. You're right. I remember your name in the roster. I was asking about you, and I was kind of blanked out for a second. But thank you for the introduction, and thanks for the positive message. And yeah, I'm sure that we all feel the same. I certainly do. I'm also curious. What's your year and what's your major?
I am a senior and my major is political science, along with acting.
Congrats on being a senior, almost done next semester, I'm assuming. I think it's a really interesting mix, with the artistic creative side of what you're doing here in college with theater arts, and then with politics. And I'm sure, as you're well aware, and I'm guessing this is part of why you are indeed interested in this class.
Yes.
Pragmatism is a philosophy that is obviously, or let's go with, can easily, right, be linked up to any kind of political movement or political initiative. All right. When the emphasis on practicality in some sense, and we'll be getting into all kinds of different senses of practicality in the next 2 months, right? When the emphasis on practicality in some sense, part of the interpretation, part of the understanding of this emphasis on practicality tends to be, for many people, for many readers, for many thinkers, for many activists, tends to be an invitation for an exclusive or a primary focus on political action. All right, and this is incredibly common when it comes to pragmatism, to the point where many of the neo-pragmatists, for example, Richard Rorty, all right, who we will be reading, right, but without doubt say, look, all this, I need first foundations based on logically consistent principles. All this, I want everybody to kind of, check and see if you actually sense things, and if you do sense things, that's how you get knowledge. Clearly, if you sense it, I sense it too. Therefore, you have objectivity. All this first primary philosophy stuff, all this foundational stuff, just throw it out the window. The first thing we need to be thinking about is, what do I like? What do you like? What are our political values? What are your political values? And this philosophy ought to be basically propaganda, which Rorty will readily admit. He just basically thinks the right kind of propaganda. Look, we'll get into all of it, right? But good. Look, welcome to class again, Kate. Thank you so much. Now,
Thank you, Professor.
Absolutely. Now, Isaiah, I guess it's your turn to introduce yourself, please, then, okay?
Yeah, sure thing. Can you hear me?
I can, a little bit low, but now I can hear you fine, but try to speak up a little bit, or maybe your mic, I don't know,
Okay, is this better?
a little.
Okay, so yeah, hi everyone. My name's Isaiah. I'm a psychology major. I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from Trinidad, and
What?
yeah,
Wait, really? For real?
yeah,
Trini mother, Jamaican
and
father, Trinidadian stepmother.
I'm sorry.
Jamaican father, Trinidadian stepmother.
Oh no way, really?
Mm-hmm. You got a lot to talk about.
Oh wow, it's hilarious. Yeah, my dad's Trinidadian and my mom's Venezuelan.
Interesting.
So yeah,
Hmm. So psych major, and you said also a senior?
I'm a junior.
Junior, got it. Okay. And you're here in New York, or
Yeah, I'm here in New York.
which borough?
Brooklyn,
Cool, cool,
East
cool.
Flatbush.
Sounds good. Flatbush, my grandmother's old neighborhood. Okay. Well, fantastic. And you know, the usual spiel I give on psychology and philosophy. I mean, all of you are upper level, advanced students, you know. I'll just say that obviously psychology is, you know, the social science that tends to be closest to philosophy. Philosophy of mind and theoretical psychology are damn near one and the same and have been for a couple thousand years. The major innovations that you get coming out of philosophy, and very, very specifically, all right, the result of the work of one of the people that we will be reading. In fact, you should have already read, right? Very specifically, one of the American pragmatists are absolutely foundational, absolutely responsible for the advent of psychology as an experimental science, moving from understanding of psychology as an empirical science. They're related, but the innovations, the introduction of experimentation in the science of psychology is pretty much, you know, pretty much ascribed to two figures. That's going to be Lange in Germany. Well, three figures. Lange in Germany, Brentano in Austria, and William James in the United States of America, who we'll read next week. All right. So all you psychologists, you know, if you study the history on discipline, you see how quickly it collapses back into philosophical research, pretty much splitting around 1870, 1880, 1890. All right, good. Let's continue here. Sorry. Okay, no. Okay, so that should be it in terms of introductions. Now back to who read what. Right, we're at 2:20. How about who has read Emerson right now? Hands up or talk to me. 1, 2, 3. All right, no problem, everybody. But listen, this basically means I'm going to have to adjust today. And keep in mind, I prepare for not so bad. I'm not going to get on you guys' cases in the second day, all right? But listen, everybody, all right? We need to make sure that we're on top of the reading. You're an upper level class. We have a lot to discuss. I'm going to be holding you to a higher standard than I do to intro level students. And I want to make sure that we're on the same page and that when I'm preparing for our discussions, right, on Wednesdays at 2, you know, is going to be the best thing for all of us together as a group and not just 4, 5, 6 of us. All right. So today I'll go ahead and slow it down. All right. And we'll go ahead and work through this stuff pretty much off the text. Okay. But I need you to be on top of the readings. So it's annoying to read. So, oh, we'll get to that, Nathan. So that, you know, we're on the same page when it comes to class discussions. Don't forget, and new people, oh yeah, new people, have you seen the syllabus? I don't want to have to take 10 minutes to go through the syllabus right now. But
Yeah, I took a look through it.
thank you, Isaiah. And how about, don't tell me, you, Kate, how about you, Kate? Have you had a chance to go through the syllabus? Kate, you there? Kate? Miani? So participation is part of your grade, all right? So if you haven't read up, you're not gonna be able to participate, and trust me, I'll know within a few weeks. Okay, so Nathan's comment. First was somewhat annoying to read because of the cultural language norm drift, but Emerson was much more annoying to You thought Emerson was more annoying? Emerson is very flowery and very more poetic and very literary versus bang, 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 bang. You know?
Well, exactly. It was just like, there's so many more metaphors and things to go in. Pierce, like, he threw some puns in, and I know I missed some because I don't understand all the references he makes, but like, he was pretty straightforward. Well, Emerson's like, you read it and you go back and you're like, he means this here, and I know he means something here that I don't understand because I need cultural context.
Well, I mean, we can go through the essay and any specific thing that you didn't understand, let's go ahead and work through. But, I mean, the culture is basically American culture, I mean.
No, I got the gist of it. It's just, I don't know, it's different looking back, I guess, versus when they're writing always.
It is, that's true. And some of the, without doubt, some of the references are old, they're outdated, sure. But, well, how about, again, we'll go ahead and get it up. We'll get the text up and we'll work through it. And, let me know specifically, which metaphors might have been lost on you. All right, so self-reliance, 1841, everyone, not 1831, sorry, 1841, okay? So we have a couple of things in the chat room. Emerson is like a string of dazzling sentences. Oh, I like Emerson over Pierce. Pierce, Emma, yeah. So we got a different opinion there. Emerson is like a string of dazzling sentences, ones to remember, to thine own self be true. I mean, yeah, exactly, John. There's 4 or 5 just absolute, slogans or, just absolute unforgettable quotes from that essay. And again, it's so incredibly important when it comes to the establishment of the American literary tradition, really the continuation, I wouldn't say establishment by 1841, but without doubt, still really contributing, Okay, agreed. I found Peirce more difficult to read than a lot of the modern texts. All right, so I'll tell you what we'll do, everybody. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Unless new people, do you have any other questions or any comments or anything? Anybody? Do you want to do anything at all about class mechanics or expectations or readings or whatever from the first class? Anything at all, anybody?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the Peirce readings. I wasn't able to finish the second essay and I got most of the way through the first one. It just seemed incredibly dense, even in comparison to like a lot of like, even reading like Descartes or something like that. And it was hard for me to understand especially in the second one, to make ideas clear.
Yeah.
I understand he's trying to basically say like, look, people have been thinking about this wrong. But to me, it seems like he's constructing an argument in the same way of like, they're doing all of this wrong. And then it's like, okay, so I'm going to show you how they're doing it wrong by doing the same thing. That's kind of the impression that I got, but I, might have been reading it wrong because it was really difficult to engage with.
I'm not sure how much sense it makes to say that your impression is wrong, as opposed to saying that, your judgment is wrong or something, but your impression is your impression. I think that I share the intuition about your impression to a certain extent, but to another extent, I don't really understand how you could have that impression. But again, that's just my impression. Because what I mean by that, Giancarlo, is, did you get a sense after finishing or at least getting halfway through how to make our ideas clear, that person in any way wanted to do the same thing in terms of establishing an absolute crystal clear, undeniable truth that will serve as a foundation for every single other truth? If the idea is this most important thing that I want to assert is important when it comes to epistemology, and more specifically, the fixation of belief or the clarification of ideas, if it's important, it doesn't mean that that's foundational. If this is something that I think is highly probably true, that's a lot different than this must be absolutely 100% true. That's the big difference. If you're saying just kind of in general, they're both like, they have a thesis, and a lot of these kind of classic philosophical things have theses, whatever. They have thesis statements, and then people make arguments to defend their thesis statements. Well, then you are indeed going to find a great deal of similarity or identity across different philosophical texts and arguments, because they're philosophical texts and arguments. you know? So I get that impression, but we'll go ahead and work on that impression when we get to the text today. Okay, John Calls? Next. No questions. Things just got real philosophical. Stacy? Well, you know me, Stace. All right. So, yeah. Well, you know, look, 2:27. We have till 4:15, everybody? Correct?
4:30.
4:30? Oh, okay. Sorry, you know, all right. New people, you know, it's great if you could have your camera on. It certainly helps me as your instructor. You don't have to, but it'd be wonderful. You know, I see, you know, we have what, 6 people with cameras on today, 5. It's good, but you know, if you could have your cameras on at least sometimes, you know, that'd be great. But so also new people, here's what we'll do. 4:30, solid 2 hours. We'll take 3 minutes, all right? 3 to 5 minutes to go over the basics of the course from the course description and the syllabus. And actually, I left off with that from the last class, from the first class, and I will go ahead and continue talking a little bit about the setup for an understanding of pragmatism. We also have a couple things here in the chat room. Maybe a tough thing about Emerson is that we are accustomed to reading an essay that builds logical statement upon statement to a conclusion. Emerson doesn't work that way. More like a collection of aphorisms circling around a single idea. It's totally true. That's my conclusion from taking Emerson and Thoreau to heart way back when I was 16 or 17, like a way to live. Exactly. It's, you know, it's philosophical, but it's not exactly like, you know, really specific to the philosophical corpus, you know, canon. It's not exactly a work of academic philosophy at all, at all. And that's, you know, very much John's point. I have to set it up first. Isaiah, you have to set up.
Oh, I'm referring to my camera.
Okay, no problem, sorry. Okay, all right. All right. 1 second. Yes, very much so. And it's also harder with the future knowledge of the failures of such positions for economic analysis and human behavior. Interesting, Nathan. Also having his laundry done for him and food brought to him in his isolation. Or am I thinking of? But I thought you were getting at some claim about rugged individualism's failure as kind of informing a sense of free market economics or something, but then you kind of shifted the whole laundry thing, and I think that's Thoreau with the isolation. That's Thoreau and Walden, and you know, on solitude and stuff like that. But I mean, Thoreau and Emerson, without doubt, share that kind of, you know, classical American value of appreciating individuality and, you know, respecting the individual sovereignty, individual rights and liberties, and, you know, sure, you know, but yeah, having his laundry brought to him and food brought to him in isolation, that's the role. All right, so 2:30, we'll do this. We'll go over one more time for the new people, and I did promise you to go back over that with people from first class. We will go back over the course description, then jump into Emerson. All right, so give me 1 second. Let me get that up. Mhm. Okay, here we go. All right, how about this? To save me a little energy, could I have a volunteer, please, to read the first paragraph? I said one paragraph is an abstract. Could I have a volunteer, please, to read, and I'll let you know when to stop. Go ahead, Isaiah.
And the first paragraph of the course description, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this class will focus on the distinctively American philosophical movement called pragmatism. Pragmatism originated
Pragmatism.
in a yeah in
Pragmatism.
pragmatism.
Let's
Okay,
start with
see.
getting the name of the class right.
Okay.
I'm not trying to crack on you. I'm not trying to crack on you for mispronouncing.
Yeah, I know. My
For
tongue gets
mispronouncing
tied.
something I do all the time. The reason I stopped you there and was playing with you is because pragmaticism is actually a different word that's very important for us when it comes to understanding Pierce, oh God, Persis and James's relationship. All right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. In fact, I actually mentioned that to the other everyone else last week. I'll do it again today, but just keep that in mind. Pragmatism and pragmaticism. So it's pragmatism.
Yeah, pragmatism. Yeah. Okay. Originated in an experimental theory of truth and subsequently evolved into a naturalistic theory of meaning and action centered on consequence and practical value. Pragmatism is one of the main philosophical movements of the West and increasingly in the 21st century across the world. In this course, we will pay special attention to three features of this philosophical view. First, it's his.
Pause. All right, someone else please pick up. Fine, Isaiah, continue.
Okay. Its historical origins in opposition to aspects of modern Western philosophy since the 17th century, rise of modern science, especially in relation to epistemic idealism and logical posit. Okay, you see words like these.
Positivism.
Yeah, positivism. Second, its radically experimental character informed by kinds of Darwinian thought that arose at the 19th century. And third, the moral and political ramifications of pragmatism, especially with regards to axiological issues concerning personal and social identity now and into the future.
Thank you very much, Isaiah. Appreciate that. Just a reminder, everybody, including the people who were indeed together with me in the first class for over 2 hours, participation is part of your grade. If you're a little bit shy about public speaking, you can type. You don't want to volunteer to read or have a comment or don't want to type anything, that's on you. No problem. Can't compel you, except to let you know that I don't think that is going to result in an A participation grade, is it? So please, come on, let's go. All right. Now, instead of doing what I did last week and going through this from the top to bottom, the new people, Kate and Isaiah, anything about this class description that you don't understand? Okay. Everybody, I think we actually left off at, we got to Darwin in thought. I mean, I will do a quick review in terms of any words that you don't aren't familiar with. Pragmatism, obviously, it's the class. Experimental, I think it should be straightforward. All right. Theory of truth, we touched on the dominant theories of truth at the time of Peirce's writing. All right. I can do a quick thing on that right now, but all right. So if you guys can remember some of those theories of truth, and as well as naturalism, right, and how naturalism relates to semantics, action theory. And then we can go into the 1, 2, 3 of reaction to modern Western philosophy, which is part and parcel we're already talking about. And then its experimental character in terms of Darwinian thought, and then it's the moral and political ramifications. All right, so anybody want to tell me what traditionally in the West, and actually in much of the world, you know, but we'll stick with the West for now to make it easier. You know, what, when people look to philosophers and say, hey, look, you know, lay all that wisdom on me. I want to hear all, you know, give me all the good stuff. You know, oh, wow, I see a reality is probably material. Oh, it could be material with some non-material. Okay, all right. And we ought to live lives that fulfill us as human beings. Okay, sounds pretty intuitive, but that means to use our reason. Okay, I get that. So it's not just about, running the marathon and getting pumped up in the gym. Okay, that might be good, but also we have to read and debate and exercise our critical things. Okay, so what about truth? Historically, all right, in the Western tradition, how do we understand truth? I gave you some things to think about last week. All right, 2 new people. I hope you might know, but if you don't, listen up. All right, how do we understand truth? All right, in the Western philosophical tradition. Go ahead, David.
I just wanted to mention I wasn't here last week, even though I'd emailed you because
Okay, now I remember. No problem. My thing is,
but I
God,
can't.
We're gonna take time to do
try to
introduction
answer the
because I
question.
think the issue though is, you're just auditing, right?
No, I'm taking it for grades. I'm a visiting student though.
Okay, that's right. I remember. Yeah, David, why would you not tell me earlier when I'm asking who was not here and who when 2 people are introducing themselves? Why would you not engage then, David?
I don't know. I guess I felt
All right, man.
uncomfortable.
No problem. David, how about you introduce yourself to myself and to the class?
Hi, I'm David. This is my last semester as a senior. I'm a philosophy major, and excited to take the course.
Yeah, you're at Villanova?
Skidmore College.
Skidmore, that's right. Yeah, okay. And they've given permission for this to count as credit in your senior year?
Uh-huh.
It makes me proud. Skidmore's a fantastic institution. Please do tell your faculty advisor that I'm very honored to have my course considered for Skidmore credits. Are you in Pennsylvania, David? Or are you here? Wait, Skidmore's upstate. I always get Skidmore confused. I always thought it was in Pennsylvania until it's upstate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's upstate New York. Yeah.
I always thought Pennsylvania for whatever reason. I had a good friend who did his undergrad at Skidmore, and he corrected me finally. And I was like, for much of my adult life, I thought Skidmore's in Pennsylvania for whatever reason.
Yeah, I feel like people do that kind of thing with Skidmore. They always think it's in different locations in the Northeast.
Yeah, that's it's one of these elite, liberal arts colleges, but for whatever reason, it sounds it's either Massachusetts or Pennsylvania or something.
It does seem like it, yeah, for sure.
Well, look, welcome to class, David. And I don't want to admonish you, but come on, David, though. You know what I mean? Please, if you're a little uncomfortable, don't hijack the entire class time. All right. But I'll tell you what we'll do. You're going to redeem yourself right now, David, by answering that question.
Okay, wait. No.
What was
the question again? I'm sorry.
It's going to be a long day. It's all right. It's good. It's a second class. Woo, boy, the summer has really ended, hasn't everybody? We are back to the grindstone. The question is, how has Western philosophy traditionally, and this obviously is not, you can't have an exclusive view and have, well, it's kind of hard for me to make a statement like that. I'll rephrase. Traditionally, all right, in terms of, kind of majority of, when it comes to arguments or whatever, but how has many thinkers in the Western tradition understood truth? That's the question.
No. Okay. Yeah.
Couple theories of truth.
Well, I don't. I thought of. I just like I thought of Plato and like Socrates and how they tried to. They tried to figure out like what different concepts were, like virtue or truth, through through dialectic and like trying to discuss it through questions and answers.
While Socrates undoubtedly employed the dialectic, questioning and answering, and Socrates himself quite skeptical about writing stuff down. It changed pretty quickly when a student became one of the most famous people in the history of the world. And so did he, because of a student writing the stuff down. All right. Socrates, without doubt, relied on dialectics, and people don't know the truth is arrived by conversation, question and answering, bounded by rational norms. But importantly, it's not exclusive to one perspective. So for a dialectical understanding, its truth is there's an exchange, between perspectives. However, very importantly, and when David first mentioned, I think to Plato, and I said you should, The thing is, he went in a little bit different direction I thought he would go, right? Without doubt, even though Plato is writing about his teacher's use of the dialectic to arrive at truth, Plato and Socrates do not believe that truth in itself is, quote, dialectical. They think the process, all right, to understand things reasonably is dialectical. Right? They're both very skeptical about the power of human individuals to arrive at knowledge themselves. It's very, very, that's a very modern idea. But what they do, right, is claim that certain truth, or that truth itself, right, is what? It is not subjective. It is not particularized. It's not, its truth is what? Basically, you can answer the question by opposite of the two things I just said. Anybody? What's in the chat room here? Sure, okay. Truth is what for Plato? Truth is what for Aristotle?
It strikes me that
Yeah, Eric.
they take truth as something that's immaterial, that you can't just put on a griddle and cook up in the morning with your eggs. That it
That's
is
Plato.
way up there, and things can partake of truth, but we can't exactly own it. We can get glimpses of it. It is outside a direct experience, and somehow, at some times, we have a knowledge of truth that we've kind of forgotten, and we can sort of remember it bit by bit by bit.
This is a Platonic conception of truth without doubt. It's good. I would hesitate a bit, John, when my question was on the quote Western, philosophical tradition, given an Aristotelian notion of truth, but for the most part, sure, and it was kind of David who kind of set us on the path of Plato, and which is, good, rightfully so. For Aristotle, truth actually is somewhat materialistic, sure, all right, unlike Plato, but fine, Plato, in terms of what you mentioned just now, that's without doubt a very good summary of a Platonic understanding of truth. Yes, absolutely.
And I'm a little bit stumped by the question myself, so I was just sort of feeling my way.
Yeah. Well, you guys remember from last week in the first class, I gave you 2 theories of truth, and that's what I'm fishing for, the first one, basically. All right. And so we have something in the chat room, which Eric correctly answered. Truth is objective for both Plato and Aristotle, and René Descartes and John Locke. All right, fine. With Descartes, it's a little tricky, but it's objective enough, right? And the objectivity of truth, right? Look, I don't want to assume how much philosophy all of you have had. So it's going to be on you to, if you need me to stop and discuss or clarify or explain some term, please don't hesitate, all right? Well, I'll go ahead and go now and continue this discussion right now with, I'll assume that you have a good grasp of the difference between subjective and objective, all right? Yeah, that's exactly it, Julia. That's exactly what I'm getting at. Yep, good. Exactly, John. All right, truth is objective. So the objectivity of truth, right, in terms of a subjective or personal or individual appreciation or judgment about truth, to have both truth be objective in a robust sense, and, all right, as John mentioned, truth being something that, as individuals, we can kind of gesture towards, glimpse at, kind of maybe occasionally, participate in, whichever, right? Kind of a subjective kind of something with this kind of objective truth. There has to be a correspondence, right? So the first main theory of truth in the West is called a correspondence theory of truth. For Plato, an eternal idea of anything is what that thing is. It is, as John has mentioned, wholly immaterial. right? It is not a physical thing whatsoever. It is not a matter of any kind of physical causal relation whatsoever. For Plato, an understanding the truth is purely and exclusively rational, right? It is only something that is mental. It is immaterial. And the rational soul for Plato latches on to truth via, all right, understanding how an idea covers all the uses of particular things, right, that we want to participate in that idea. I'll be clear, right? Truth for Plato is you have a governing idea, a concept, basically, we say these days, all right? For Plato was idios, right? It's the same word as form. The morphe is shape. The idios is form, but we'll translate it differently in modern English, right? Sometimes it'll be translated as idea, sometimes it'll be translated as form, right? So these Platonic forms, let's say you have the form of a table. You can have a 3-legged table. You can have a round table, a square table. You can have an 8-foot table, a 2-inch dollhouse table. Can you have a 2-millimeter table? Can you have a liquid table? If you guys want to get into the ontology of tables, we can. We teach metaphysics a couple of semesters. Point is,
Professor,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. For Plato, basically from I don't know if I'm wrong or not, but correct me. I know you will, but for Plato, facts are backed by truth, right? For Plato,
Facts are,
fa-
for Plato, facts are what?
the facts are leading up to the truth, because you said Plato said it's not material, right?
Truth is not material, and ultimately, yeah, that's correct.
So the facts are back. Facts lead up to truth, right?
Well, what do you mean by facts?
Like for the truth, right? If somebody said this is the truth, and then they give a fact why it's the truth, right? Like if the sky is blue, and the scientists give you facts why the sky is blue, right?
Yeah.
So that's immaterial.
No.
True. No. Okay.
The fact, how is the fact immaterial if in the example of the sky is blue? Maybe some mental function, right, that allows us to express or move our mouths and tongues and say in English, the sky is blue, or en français, la ciel est bleu. All right. You know, maybe the mental function is immaterial, but the refraction of light, via the atmosphere seems to me to be a wholly physical phenomena. And a modern notion of fact, which Plato does not discuss, and that's actually what I'm waiting to really answer with you, but I'm just want to probe your question so
Okay.
you can understand it better. The notion of fact that you're working with here is quite modern, and for Plato, well, back to what you were saying, I don't see what is immaterial about, the physical phenomena, the physical interactions that are supposed to, impinge upon our sensory apparatus and, do things with our nervous systems and produce certain signals or whichever. All that seems physical, no? So why is that immaterial?
I was trying to get an understanding. That's all.
So let me say this. You are on the right track if you do one thing. It's not facts. It's way too modern for Plato. You're not going to get a Platonic dialogue where he's talking much about facts.
All right.
Yeah, there might
thank
be a couple translated with facts, but what will you get, Dennis? If you read some Plato, what do you get a lot? Not facts, but what? A T word. We already talked about it.
The truth.
Exactly. Truth.
Which-
You're saying, which is a very modern notion, right? Don't facts determine truthful talk? Don't facts determine if we're right or wrong with what we say about something? And that is very modern. That is not what Plato thinks. Plato
Okay.
give reasons for the sky being blue, reasons for someone saying that the sky is blue. Reason, not facts.
Okay.
Aristotle will start to talk about facts, sure.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So reasons. And if you replace facts with reasons with what you said, then yeah. All right. Go ahead, Joshua.
I don't know if this is gonna help Dennis in any way, but the way I understand it is that it's more of like, and I can be wrong in this as well, but
We can all be
Plato,
wrong.
Plato
Okay.
is much more conceptual, in the fact of like, in the aspect of like something like a table. I would imagine that Plato would be more concerned with the idea of what makes a table as opposed to like the factual, observable features, or well, not features, but
Properties.
yeah, observable properties of a table. It's more of like, um, if I tell you the word, if I speak to you and I speak of the word a triangle, you're going to be able to understand exactly what I mean conceptually, because you know what a triangle is. And in a way, that's kind of like the truth that Plato's talking about. You don't really need facts or like intense, deliberate
True.
measurements or explanations of that factor. It's more of like, in a very conceptual and like almost cosmic way, it's truth, just because it has to be.
It's true. It's good. Yeah, that is
Thank you,
good.
Joshua.
Yeah, sure.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. So look, back. Oh, I have some things in the chat room. Matches something exactly. I thought he said lower physical things participate in the higher truth of forms. He does, Nathan. The point I'm making though is the determination of truth is by reasoning in terms of the forms and not via a collection of experiences with the particulars. All right. So the physical particulars that you're referring to, Plato will say these are copies of the abstract form. These are copies of the universal idea of something, right? So this table that this thing on is a copy of the eternal idea of a table, right? A 2 millimeter table, since it might not serve one like necessary condition of a table, namely being able to hold another physical object, maybe, all right? If that's one necessary condition, well then no, the 2 millimeter table is not a table, and people saying the word table for something that's 2 millimeters in length or whatever are simply mistaken. They have a false, all right, false claim about tables, all right? So, you know, non-standard examples are where you can probe to see if a sufficient condition, it could be the case, or a necessary condition, it must be the case, is ascribable to the thing that you're talking about, given the governing idea. All right. So yes, almost, in fact, every physical thing has an idea. Well, it's in some dialogues, Plato will say every physical thing has a governing universal idea. Other dialogues, Plato will say, if it's nameable, then it has an idea. If it's not named or if it's not nameable, then it doesn't have a clear idea, except for something like in the mind of the demiurge in the realm of the gods. All right, so yes and no on that, Nathan, but the forms are certainly explanatory. They're primary in terms of explanation and not the other way around, which is, I guess, what you're saying. But wouldn't his dialectic references talk about statements of facts? No. Sure, he attributed it to Socrates, but they had disagreements in the dialogues that talk about what passed for facts at the time, insofar as general consensus of truth being a fact. If you want to show me the dialogues where you're saying that Plato and Socrates are having disagreements about facts at the time.
Well, not so much disagreement, just like when you said like they don't reference facts, like I know I'm thinking of like a lot of the political science ones where they would say something is true and they would have the other participant in the dialogue agreeing that it's true, and that's why the other position couldn't be right. They seemed to be in agreement that there was a fact, some kind of like truth that both parties could reference so they could say why they were right or wrong. They weren't necessarily like, you know, this weighs so many kilograms in that sense, but they had some conception of an agreed upon thing as being a fact, even if it doesn't pass modern muster.
Do you want to show me those?
Yeah, let me go look up
Check it out.
what's the one about makes right one?
That's in the Republic. That's book 1. Those are going to be truths. They're all going to be truths. But if you can find a translation where they use the word facts, go ahead. If you want to conceive of Platonic ideas or forms as truth determiners, then you can say that facts are immaterial. It's an incredibly weird way to talk. And it's something that is obviously anathema to a modern ear. Facts tend to be things that we understand as measurable. And if you want to talk about something, for example, like a mental fact, those are going to be referencing abstract particulars, not universals, like all Platonic ideas are universals. I don't think you're going to find a dialogue where they're saying, we all agree on the fact of the matter here, but there might be a couple. But I think what you'll get is, oh, we can see that truth, this truth, X, Y, and Z. But go ahead and take a look at that. We'll go ahead and go, John. But even the sky looks different from different places and different times. Yep, the sky looks different in Australia. It looks different today, but from what is a few days ago, we had a perfectly clear day. Now, I don't think that, I'm guessing, John, you're here talking about a correspondence theory in terms of a Platonic notion of Platonic metaphysics in terms of the forms, immaterial forms. The forms admit to being understandable as instantiations of a general abstract idea in particular things. They admit to relativity of perception of the particular things. There's no tension, really. Maybe some tension. There's no contradiction whatsoever in things can look different to different perspectives and still participate in the same overall general idea. In fact, that's what the idea is basically saying.
Right. What I think I'm disagreeing with David, who suggested that the sky might be one example.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see
something.
what. I actually didn't even. I skipped it. I didn't even. Okay, 1 second. How would he talk about the sky? Sorry, I see it. Something like a table has many examples, and then we can talk about the overarching concept. But since there's only one sky, what would you say about the concept versus the one particular or the sky? Look, I'll just give you a very quick sense of what would say with all anything. It could be clearly physical, tables and rocks and trees and stars, or it could be seemingly clearly immaterial, feelings, emotions, thoughts, ideas themselves, numbers themselves, numbers as opposed to numerals, ideas as opposed to words, propositions as opposed to sentences, clearly physical, clearly immaterial, right? Either way, Plato's thing is basically the same. You have to imagine, right, what could possibly be true given this idea, what could not possibly be true given this idea, what could be false given this idea, and what must be false given this idea. The whole name of the game for Plato, right, is going to be what can we understand rationally without sensory observation in terms of how we can just get a general intuition about could this possibly be true or not. So if somebody says, look, I've measured every table on earth. Right? It took me my entire lifetime. I've measured every table. Trust me, there are no tables 0.02 millimeters long. Okay. Well, is it possible, that there could be, future technology that can make something that looks like a table that's, not possible, not visible to the naked eye? Probably. There are all kinds of stuff already that people can engineer and make that are not visible to the naked eye. Is it possible that in some planet somewhere, you have a species or a race of beings, right, that are so small that on Earth, our 0.02 millimeter table can fit a family of 4 on that planet, if they're that small. And then we can then say, oh, it functions as a table because the table necessarily can hold objects, and I don't know, possibly it could be, all right, sufficient, doesn't have to be, it could be, and it could possibly seat a family of 4. You see it? It's all about using your reasoning and some of your imagination to test possible cases, possible borderline cases to establish, is this use of language indeed capturing a universal idea in this particular instance or fact? If it's material, if it's particular, if it's measurable, there you have your facts, everybody. Don't get it twisted and do 2021, projecting back on 391 BCE, right? But look, maybe I've been, maybe there's been, I've been debunked. We have some mention of facts here in the Republic. Let's go ahead and go. Now, so that goes back to the whole difference of perspective. So I think your point, John, I see your response, and then that's also kind of answering with both. You know, it's built in variation of appearance. It's built in to a Platonic sense of understanding truth. Thrasymachus, I said with the quiver, don't be hard upon us. Polemarchus and I have been guilty of a little mistake in the argument, but I can assure you that the error was not intentional. You were seeking for a piece of gold. You would not imagine that we were knocking under to one another, or so losing our chance of finding it. And why, when we are seeking for justice, a thing more precious than many pieces of gold, do you say that we are weakly yielding to one another and not doing our utmost to get at the truth? Nay, my good friend, we are most willing and anxious to do so, but the fact is we cannot. And if so, you people who know all things should pity us and not be angry with us. Yes, correct, Nathan. As I said, the emphasis on truth here, not fact, because you see the word fact does not mean that Platonic epistemology is fact-based. They are indeed, there is a Greek term that's translated as fact, but you're not going to get it much in Platonic dialogues, including this one, in which you have here truth, fact. You're going to have truth 10 times more than you're going to have the word fact translated. You want to know why? And I'll tell you what the word is. Right? Very specifically, the fact is going to be material. Specifically, the fact is going to be quantifiable. Specifically, the facts are going to be measurable, and specifically, facts are going to be particulars. They're particulars. You can't have a fact that's universal. All right. You can have a claim towards a universal that contradicts itself, right? But facts are just there. It's not. Let's say. Let me try to illustrate this in a better way. All right. Right, my phone. All right. So it's a fact that the phone is in my hand right now. It's a fact that this phone, the coloration is black. All right. It's not a contradiction to say that the phone is not black. It's simply just false. If I said the phone is invisible, if I said the phone is immaterial, right, that seems like it would be a conceptual contradiction. All right. So that's something where you have a sense in terms of the law of non-contradiction. All right. Which is allowing you to say it couldn't possibly be immaterial. All right. So we don't have to, basically waste time and go and check for invisible phones that don't have any shape. All right. But facts are different, right? There's nothing intrinsic. There's nothing contradictory about saying the phone is any color. Those are the facts about the phone. The contradiction would be about the idea of phone in terms of phones being a type of material object, and a material object couldn't possibly be immaterial. You see the difference between truths and facts? It's very specifically, they're involving the difference between understanding universals and particulars. The particular being sensible, the universal not being sensible in itself, but having secondary sensible qualities after the universal is instantiated in a particular. Does that help, Nathan? But you would like to say, but like you say that they could be translated, making it more immutable. I've already just explained that. So if you still have an issue with that, Nathan, let me know. It's true, you can swap out. All right, next. So correspondence theory, all right? Let's get up to the modern time so we can get back into pragmatism. Okay, everybody? Any questions right now? Descartes, what makes something true? Anybody? Oh, you upper level philosophy people should know your Descartes. Yeah. That makes something certain, Nathan. But, and that's for Descartes, a very, very valuable type of qualification for truth. Sure, but just kind of more broadly, what makes, how can I rephrase that? How can we know something to be true? What is truth for Descartes? Which is pretty much going to be how many of you right now, common sense would explain this. All right, fine. It's correspondence, absolutely correspondence. For Descartes, truth is a function of the subjective individual mind having, there are different ways to arrive at truth for Descartes, but all right, I'll just go with having a perception, right, that leads to an idea. The perception is caused by something outside of the mind, all right, usually something physical, all right, something extended. If something extended interacts with our extended bodies, our physical bodies, then it will cause certain things in our minds, right? Also very important for Descartes, certain ideas already in the mind, and we can project those ideas onto our precepts. So there's a two-way correspondence. Some innate ideas corresponding with certain things, for example, the existence of the self, right? That we can then articulate in language and then be judged true or false about. Or something like a rock or sky or a phone, right? Give me an impression of something, which I basically have a picture in my mind of, and then I'm accurately using language to capture that impression, express that impression. The point is correspondence between a subjective idea, mental idea, right, immaterial idea, and either an immaterial object or a material extended object. So the correspondence, subject and object. Descartes, everyone clear? The same exact thing for John Locke. Big difference is he doesn't countenance abstract mental truth makers or facts if you want. Because by the time you get to Locke, you're going to be getting an emphasis on facts, sure. With the empiricist, then you start to get into a fact-based epistemology, which you absolutely have with the pragmatist. All right, everybody? So that's the correspondence theory. Any questions at all? 309, well. What's another theory of truth that we get in the West? It's really a modern theory. Go ahead, Julia.
The coherence theory of truth.
Absolutely, good. All right. You get this a little bit of Kant, but really with Hegel, you get the correspondence theory. Anybody want to give me a quick sense of the coherentist theory of truth? Anybody? Anybody? Here.
Well, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm just putting something in the chat room for everybody. Stanford Encyclopedia article on truth. Have a look. A coherence theory of truth, right, is giving up on the idea that truth is a matter of basically language or ideas matching or corresponding with some fact or some entity that makes it true. That is being rejected, and truth then becomes the theory is basically saying truth is a function of the ideas that we have. They relate to other ideas that we have. Some ideas seem to kind of go outside of themselves and refer to non-linguistic or non-mental things, right? But it's only seemingly so. While the idea about, a real physical world outside of a mind, well, that may well be something where we can indeed arrive at truths about. The actual concept of truth from a coherentist perspective, from a coherentist theory of truth, has to do everything with the relations between our ideas and other ideas, or in more modern parliament, that truth is systematic, and that our truths function in ways, our ideas or our concepts function in ways, right, to maintain a certain level of consistency when it comes to all of our beliefs. All right. So the way to kind of think about this is where you have some, like, let's say, typical Cartesian story about some fact, a material extended thing, did something in my eyes and my skin and my mouth, and it gave me some mental thing, which I'm expressing, all right, as, yay or nay, yes or no, accurate or inaccurate. I'm matching it or I'm not, all right? And then every community can judge for my personal, subjective, judgment about I'm using this correctly or not. Am I being serious or intentional or not, whatever. For a coherentist, it's that thing may well have done something to my body, and maybe there is some immaterial realm where there's something happening, or maybe it's all material in the brain. The point about truth, though, is it's all about consistency with use of language, right? Or consistency when it comes to our conceptual scheme is the term of art. So if you think that that object, right, caused you to say phone or rock or sky, the coherentist would say, really what is going on is something might have happened, but you are claiming sky or phone or tree because you're not claiming not sky, not phone, not tree. You guys get it? The logical disjunction there is what's doing the work, not the matching relationship. It's the relationship of keeping our conceptual scheme consistent, our thoughts consistent, right? And not all this plethora of sensory, bombardment of sensory experience all the time. And I'm going, paint, sticker, tree, rock, air, breathe, whatever, right? That's not how experience works for the coherentist. For the coherentist is you're getting bombarded with sensory stuff all the time, right? But what you're focused on in terms of your consciousness, in terms of your attention, is what you intend to express and intend to be maximally consistent about when you express it, all right? Unless you want to play act, or you want to play foolish, you want to play lunatic, or you are foolish or a lunatic. The coherentist, all right, is saying, give up on the matching relationship because there's too many problems, all right? What about the problem of, okay, you say table, all right, it seems to match. I say tabla. Same, but different. Okay, how do you say table in Spanish, anybody? How about table in Polish? Spanish, Polish,
For
anybody?
Spanish.
What is it?
Mesa for Spanish.
Mesa.
M-E-S-A.
Yes, thanks. I wrote mesa. Polish, Russian, anybody?
In Polish, it's stew.
Stew. The sounds are totally different, right? So it's almost like arguing, I can't believe you don't understand the correspondence relationship. Obviously, this fact ought to lead us to conclude this is a stew and not a table. This is a mesa and not a table. What's the matter with you? You see it? The coherentist is saying, that's all surface level sensory input, surface level language. It's the conceptual scheme. It's the logical relations that's making truth or falsity, all right? The coherentist is not going to be nearly as fact-based as the correspondence theorist, but you can work in an account of facts and facticity into a coherentist epistemology. And you know what you get when you do that, everybody? What do you get? Correspondence theory, coherence theory. What do you think you get? What's the name of the class?
Pragmatism.
You get pragmatism. That's what you get. Everyone clear? Okay, yeah. That's all the response to the classical traditions of truth. All right. They're synthesizing. You can read it in what you call it. I mean, Eric, good, because in fact, Pierce is really concerned with science. Absolutely. All right. Why am I making the same mistake that I just said, Pierce? I'm trying to make sure at first I thought we would have enough time. Now I'm a little bit rushing. Peirce, all right, is concerned with scientific explanation. But I'll say this very quickly. The pragmatists are like, there's a lot of things that are going to keep our conceptual schemes consistent. And it's not only about scientific explanation. So sorry, Mr. Peirce. And that's where you get, who was it earlier? Isaiah, when you're reading, that's when Peirce says, look, I'm interested in scientific explanation and how we can use metaphysics in a minimalistic way to support science. And if you want to go talking about how belief in angels and demons and Yahweh and all kinds of this, that, the other thing is helpful to people's conceptual schemes in terms of making them feel good, take my name off that. In fact, call it pragmatism. That's the joke there, Isaiah. He didn't want to be identified as a pragmatist any longer and told James, call me a pragmaticist. I'll use pragmaticist because that word is so ugly, nobody else will co-opt it. All right. So yeah, let's go. 320. Responses to traditional theories of truth in the West. What's next? Anybody, any questions on this here? Any questions, anybody? All right. Next. I'll recopy the synopsis. Let's finish this up faster now because the Darwin stuff will take a little time, but let's get it going a little faster. Let's redo this, put it back in the chat, hold on. Hold on a second. Next. Naturalism. Do we understand what naturalism is? Anybody? Anybody ever heard the term naturalism? All of you know nature. What about naturalism?
To be informed by scientific explanation, particularly of nature.
Perfect. Good. Sounds like someone said last week, but good. You remembered it. All right. Excellent. All right. So can someone give me can someone give me a sense of what would be a philosophy or philosophical position that is distinctly anti-naturalistic, very much against naturalism? We've already talked about the main person. Anybody? Anti-naturalistic Western philosophers. Anybody?
Socrates.
Yeah.
This wasn't he sort of like idealist or whatever.
Yeah, because basically Socrates, but I mean, they're already in, tied at the hip, whatever. They're Socrates and who, how do we know Socrates? Besides Xenophon and Diogenes Lucretius 90 years later. How do we know Socrates?
Well, through Plato.
Plato. All right. Socrates and Plato. Not very naturalistic at all. Again, they don't care so much about facts. And again, to answer your concern, Nathan, I'll qualify. They don't care so much about particular materialistic things that we have come to label as facts, okay? They're not as concerned. They're very much, especially Socrates, he claims that his philosophy is eminently practical, but he thinks a focus on what we call natural science is taking away from the practicality of what? What is the Platonic and the Socratic warning about an overt exclusive focus on just knowledge about nature? There's something very specific that they say. What can that cause a problem about? It loses focus on the ethical life.
Oh, on like living the virtues and the good
Exactly.
life and what is
Exactly.
correct.
Exactly. Socrates and Plato were interested in virtue and leading a moral, ethical, good life. Absolutely. They wanted to teach human beings about how to live the best life, not know the most stuff. That's a big thing for them. And Aristotle's wrestling with that because Aristotle is the quote father of science. All right. Did Plato think of himself as a scientist? It's a loaded question, but I want to hear your answers. If any people, I clearly know people are well read in Plato already, so this is good. Did Plato think of himself as a scientist? Why not?
I
He
mean,
thought that he
modern
was engaged
scientists
in
would think.
episteme for sure. Episteme, as in the Greek sense of science, systematic knowledge. He did. When you add the modern conception of science, experimentation, rigorous application of mathematical models, and openness to a social collaborative research program, that's where it's different, right? It's still systematic, but you add a bunch of different characteristics to it, all right? So that's where it's different. So it's, when I said it's tricky, it's a loaded question because it's yes or no, all right? If you understand nature and place an understanding of nature in, in a kind of important role for human beings, which is Aristotle certainly did. Oh, please. Excuse me. All right, Aristotle certainly did.
But it strikes me that Aristotle is always talking about people.
Sure.
Hey, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm gonna charge my father with murder. Well, how can you justifiably do that? Or variations on that, where what little I know of the pre-Socratics, they're always talking about the how does the world come to be? Everything is moving, everything is liquid, everything is this, everything is fire, there's this, but they're always
Correct.
talking.
How the world comes to be and what the world is. They're all physicists, basically.
Right.
And Plato, via his teacher Aristotle, is basically heralding a revolution in Western philosophical thought right at the beginning of Western philosophical thought, such that the real first philosopher that comes down to us in the written record, Thales, 498 BCE, is not really even considered much of a philosopher. Now, part of it is a function of you only have 4 or 5 fragments that remained, all right? But part of it also is often people, historians will identify Plato as the first philosopher because he's the most comprehensive. And importantly, he's talking about not only early physics and explanation of nature in terms of a rational explanation, but he's also identifying non-materialistic, non-natural, all right, aspects that are important for human existence, namely virtues, morality, ethics, political sensibilities. So yes, the pre-Socratic philosophers, they're basically early scientists, but Plato and Aristotle, Socrates and Plato are doing something which they feel is very different. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't cut you off, John.
Nope, that's pretty much what I was trying to say.
Yeah, all right. So again, it's a loaded question. So yes or no, but for the most part, scientists, as we think of it right now, it's Aristotle. And then really, as we think of it right now, Copernicus and Galileo. Descartes himself? Yeah, all right, these, yeah. Okay, so naturalism and an experimental sensibility. What else we have? And then let's go ahead and just jump into Emerson. Any questions so far right now? Meaning and action, I think it's a consequence of practical value. One big question, but I'd love to see papers on stuff. I mean, if somebody wants to get into the meaning of consequence, or, that would be something good, but, consequence and practical value. We're going to go ahead and continue down. Then now the 3 features. its historical origins and opposition to aspects of modern Western philosophy since the 17th century, rise of modern science, especially in relation to idealism, logical. All right, let's go ahead and get to idealism, positivism. Okay, everybody? I think we did the first class. I don't want this to be too redundant. All right, but you guys did the reading, so I got to make up the time. All right, so what is idealism then? I mean, these are popular theories in early modern metaphysics. And what is idealism, and who would be a good example of an idealistic philosopher? Anybody? I'm going to go back to my thing. Anybody?
I'm taking a stab at this, but would Spinoza be an example of an idealist? He's somebody who is sitting down and saying, like, this is how the world works without like going out into the world and like experimenting about it. He's just thinking about it.
Is a good stab at it, and it's accurate-ish. It's accurate almost enough, but what you're doing is conflating basically you conflate rationalism and idealism there. But the thing is, John Carlos, to say what you just said, if you qualify Spinoza's rationalism as a kind of epistemic idealism in a sense, then that's okay. That's all right. The only issue is Spinoza is very complicated, and he thinks that the materiality of the universe and the immateriality of the universe are both characteristics or properties of a deeper underlying reality. And so it's not exactly accurate fully to describe him as an idealist, because he thinks that there is indeed a reality to the material world. It's basically the entire physical universe, which identifies as God in a way, right? That's just kind of like, think about like the body of God. And then, so, you know, it's not neatly separable from the mind of God. You see it? So yes and no, but good attempt. Now go ahead, Joshua. Sorry, I cut you off. And then
No, it's okay. Would Kant be an idealist? He would be an idealist, right?
would. Yes, he would. And the name of the position is what? Transcendental idealism. Now, very importantly, all right, for Kant, that is epistemic idealism. And you heard me just now with John Carlos. All you have to do is qualify epistemic. Similar to Kant. Kant is basically, his epistemology is Spinozian, without doubt. All right, what do they believe? What does that mean to say that the epistemology is idealistic? How you know something is based on idealism, not what there is. Two different types of idealism, don't get it twisted.
Huh.
All right. Epistemic idealism is about how we know things, what we can know, and what knowledge consists of. Metaphysical idealism is the claim that existence in some significant, meaningful way is immaterial, non-material. They are different. They just happen to share the same name because, you know, they both focus on immateriality, eidios, all right? Or in terms of epistemics, immediate intuition or rational apprehension, as opposed to mediation via the senses. Now that ought to help you answer why Kant is an idealist, Joshua. There's nothing but our conception of them. That's right, Nathan. Berkeley is one, but that's a bit much to ascribe to him. Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm not extremely well read on Kant. But essentially, no, not extremely. So essentially what you were saying is the difference between epistemological and metaphorical,
Metaphysical.
metaphysical. Okay, okay, that makes more sense. I'm sorry, I misheard.
Some metaphysicians,
I was
bro.
just, I was confused. I was like, what?
I certainly like to think I talk about reality and not, you know.
Yeah, I was
or-
confused.
Okay, let's.
So would it have to do? I mean, I having fear of saying something wrong.
Don't worry about it. One has to do with how we know things. And the idea is, how can a neuron know a neuron? How can a set of neurons know about tables, skies, and rocks and phones? Or is it that people or perspectives or human beings, or as Kant calls them, agents, rational agents know things, not collections of their body parts, all right? So the basic problem you have is the Platonic problem. How can a physical thing that's a material instance of something, right, that's a particular thing, right, know anything at all, right? And so they had to kind of posit, well, there's something special about us with material bodies. We have non-material stuff going on, all right? And then you'll get, okay, so all the other stuff that's moving, animals, growing, plants, all right? They also have immaterial stuff going on in that materiality. For Plato, the material stuff didn't matter as much. He does say, like, look, you have to educate children, make sure that they do gymnastics. They're educated physically because he wanted basically soldiers in his ideal city. And he wanted the best soldiers to also be super smart and then basically dominate everyone else, but not own property, not have to worry about money. So their domination is purely altruistic for the city state because they don't have to worry about any economic interest because their material needs are provided by the state as the guardian class, whichever. All right. So, he does say, I guess the body's important enough, but he's all about cultivate your soul, make the right choices, make sure you sharpen your mind with, logic problems. Aristotle, on the other hand, is the body's important because matter is real and that's what reality is, plus the immaterial stuff. Aristotle, like Spinoza, it's hylomorphism. It's the rational kind of mental agency in the universe interacting with the physical. It's all kind of one thing intermingled. You can't really neatly separate mental, physical, function, final cause, material cause, efficient cause. All right. For Plato, you absolutely can separate. You have to. So now that should go a long way to help answer why Kant is an idealist. He's not saying that everything is immaterial, whatever. In fact, what does he say about ontology and claiming that all things are reducible to this kind of thing? What did he say? He doubts we can do that. What he thinks we can do is arrive at particular truths based on science and use philosophy or metaphysics as a critique of the concepts involved in science. But he's giving up on everything is physical, or everything is both physical and mental, or everything is immaterial, or everything is not, everything is material, or everything is made out of blue cheese and everything is made out of green cheese. He doesn't care about that kind of ontology. He says it's impossible. That's the old ancient way of doing philosophy. Now modern science and modern philosophy also coming out of philosophy has shown we reach a point of maturation where we have to respect our limitation on our reason, our limitation on our knowledge. And as part of understanding limitation on our knowledge is we can't have God's eye view of the entire universe from a particular perspective. So we can infer certain things in the most general sense of science, but give up on that. But what he does say is we can absolutely know how we know, right? And that's where the idealism comes in, right? So whereas the empiricist is saying the facts determine what it is that we know, all right? Our senses give us ideas. Kant will say our senses give us some kinds of ideas, and some kinds of ideas we get not from the senses whatsoever. That's the idealism there, all right? So the idealism for Kant is, we have some stuff in the chat room, people are talking about it. So let's go ahead and see what you got going here. So Kant felt that there were ideal methods for developing knowledge. He did. Yep. The logical method, basically, the a priori method, the pure method, Kant calls it. All right. Kant agrees that we have perceptions. Yep. But he argues that the big thing is how the mind works to know exactly. Yep. It's not just brute facts giving us raw perceptions, and all of a sudden, magically, we have meaning. Not at all. We have categories that we apply that filter through the raw sensory data that allows us to form ideas that are appropriate for our type of life as human beings. All right. So that gives up in the whole God's eye, perspective of doing metaphysics, arriving at universal Platonic type knowledge. Good. Kant felt that the underlying self-referential and self-writing knowledge that comes from logic is the only true way to know ultimately. Yep. Good. The a priori method. Good. We got some Kant scholars up in here, don't we? Excellent. Excellent. All right.
No, in my case, it's just that I'm taking Chad Kidd's
Right now?
course on critique of pure reason. And so I have read all of the preface to the first edition, all 10 pages or so. So that's the Kant that I know.
That's the Kant, that's the Kant that's good enough for our purposes and pragmatism at this point. Excellent. All right, good. All right, and say hello to Chad for me. He was just in Paris. He might still be there. Yeah. Did he come back?
Good. I think so. Yeah, he was in. I recognized his study from the first Zoom class. So yeah, I think he's back. He didn't say anything about Paris in the class, but
ask him.
I will ask him.
I wonder if my student, Mr. Welch, is a cyber stalker. I'm joking. Just ask him and tell him that Damien mentioned that he was just in Paris with his wife and they just escaped from the kids. He's got like 7 kids.
Oh, I didn't know how many kids.
His name is Chad Kidd. He's got 7 kids. Yeah.
Well, he's talked about his dog.
Well, they went to Paris to get away from the kids. Let's get back to pragmatism. All right. Where are we? Doesn't he say in the preface that he will have reason explain itself where it's unclear? Yeah. So doesn't he think that reason is infallible, but humans are the fallible filter it passes through? You're personifying reason, though. Oh, wait a second. Chad's in Belgium now? And so you're also in that same class, Nathan? So he probably was in a library, John. Yeah. To be very honest with you, I'll be traveling pretty soon and be teaching you guys probably from California in the next 3 weeks. Yeah.
Good for you. Right.
I hope so. The only issue is going to be 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm really worried about that.
Right.
But yeah, you guys will be, noon.
Chad mentioned that he had actually been touching pages of Husserl. That would make sense if he's in Louvain.
Exactly. It would. It absolutely would. Yeah. So that's a good connection to make.
Good for him.
Okay, everybody.
And, good for you in California.
We'll see. To be frank, it might be Hawaii, but if I can afford it, it would be Seoul, but I'm not going to stay in the hotel for 2 weeks and waste friggin' $80 a night or whatever. So we'll see. Okay. Let's finish this up and just go ahead and get into Emerson. Any questions at all right now in terms of naturalism, idealism, anti-naturalistic philosophies that the naturalists, pragmatists would be reacting to? More idealists, everybody would be, for example, Hegel, where you have subjective idealism, someone like Berkeley. The idea is individual minds get their knowledge from sensations, right? And for us to be able to say something exists is for it to be perceivable, and then it gives off basically sensations that we get, via our senses, and that gives us ideas. So for Berkeley, the subjective idealism is subjective because it's individual, subjective, right? It's kind of in terms of the mental side, not the causal side. It's also idealistic because it's not material, right? Its ontology is immaterial. He would say the physical objects that we claim are hard or extended or have shape or other kind of qualities or physical qualities, these in themselves, we just kind of get a sense of hardness via touch, a sense of opacity via vision. It's just still sensory qualities, and the way that we can think about certain things that give us sensible qualities that maintain themselves over time is because they're being eternally sensed or eternally perceived by God. hence that justifies Berkeley's immaterialism, right? Hegelian idealism is, well, no, it's not individual minds that are making sense of an immaterial world. It's, back to Aristotle, matter by itself is meaningless, but the function of matter, which we understand in terms of rationality, in terms of reasonable, this works this way, this doesn't work that way, this fulfills this goal, that doesn't fulfill that goal, a rational understanding of telos, all right, ends means ends reasoning, all right, function goal reasoning, all right, will give us a sense of what is apparently reasonable to believe, what apparently is rational. And if it's rational enough, then it's real for us, right? And that could be a rational understanding of stars, trees, rocks, and phones, physical, or a rational understanding of feelings, emotions, and intentions, mental. It's all mixed together. But what's different with Hegelian idealism is it's not up to the individual mind whatsoever. We get wholesale kind of claims on rationality by the entire universe as a system. All right, so it's objective idealism. The objects themselves have ideal qualities that we know in terms of their ideal rationality, in terms of our rational apprehension of their ideal function. All right, so that's objective idealism. Pragmatists are reacting to both. Okay, any questions on idealism now? Okay, next. Hold on. I lost the chat room. Okay. Logical positivism is a very specific 20th century take on positivism, which is the philosophy that claims that scientific knowledge is the best kind of knowledge, or scientific knowledge is the only kind of knowledge, or scientific knowledge is something that we ought to be striving towards, or whichever. It's heavily science-based. Naturalism and positivism are close, but positivism, you can kind of think of it as a kind of extremist version of naturalism. If you want to say something like everything is natural, which kind of tends towards everything is physical, everything is material, or everything should be understood using the methods of natural science, that's Peirce. Peirce thought of his pragmatism, then later his pragmatism, basically as a philosophy of science. James is going to absolutely just take that in a different direction. We'll see, but so for the positivist, right? It's not only is everything material, or science gives us a good, reliable method to understand things. It's, if science says that the world is nothing but green cheese, that's what it is. If science says that the world is nothing but quarks, leptons, subatomic particles, electrons, neutrons, and protons, and then aggregate macromolecules, then that's what it is. If science says that the world is human beings, intentions, ideas, mentality, and physical stuff, that's, you see where I'm going with it? Basically, positivism is whatever the best results of science says at the time, with a sense that we're moving in history and we can't expect it to be settled. All right. Positivism also, in terms of logical positivism, they wanted to do something very specific. Many of them, the Vienna Circle is very important. Figures like Ludwig Wittgenstein, Carnap, and Fagel, and these people, and Bertrand Russell, people like this. Many of them in Austria, were somewhat radical. Many were Jewish scholars, and many fled Nazi Germany, fled fascism. Many were communists and socialists, and thought of their positivism, to be frank, as part and parcel of the Marxist historical project of establishing human thought on more scientific principles. But they wanted to go with real science as opposed to dialectical historical science, right? Which basically meant physics-centered science, all right? Many of them were concerned with how can we debate certain things without resorting to violence and killing each other, all right? So the positivist is going to say something like this: look, you want to say something was a legit philosophical kind of project, then it should be in the service of science. Well, what does that mean? Well, does our analysis lead to concepts that are actually used in science or not? Does our philosophical engagement lead to a critique of theories that show that some aspect of a theory is actually not referring to something physical, or it's not referring to some kind of tautological explanation, which you find in mathematics and logic? Basically, is it a matter of quantifiable thinking, or is it a matter of reference to fact? If it's not either, it's just meaningless. So the positivist thought what philosophy should be doing in the 20th century and in the future is separating basically BS and bunk from all the real stuff that we can do science on. And so metaphysics is pretty much going to be considered a dead end. Epistemology of science is the way to go. And then thinking about morals and politics in terms of social scientific principles. This is logical positivism, everyone. Everyone clear about the basics of logical positivism? Quine is the one who's going to be really engaging the positivists and bringing logical positivist principles into American pragmatism, helping to result in a very distinctive type of naturalistic neo-pragmatism that we will be reading in about a month. Okay, everybody? Now we have some stuff in the chat room. I'm kind of confused on how Persis references the lower level forms of mathematics as an example as to why there is an objective reality separate from individual perception, and then rejects the idea of things outside of physicality. It's because he thinks that there's nothing arbitrary about adjudicating mathematical truth. Nathan, that's what he's going to say. He's going to be quite agnostic about the ontology of numbers, and he's going to say, how do they work? You know what? I'm not free to say 2 and 2 is 5. Are you? And if you are, then the buildings would collapse around us. So that's partly what he's getting at there. But you know what? Let's go ahead and get to Emerson. So any questions right now, anybody? So positivism, Darwinian thought, I'm sure all of you know. What is Charles Darwin famous for?
Evolution.
What's the name of the book? Where he first presents his probabilistic account of something that, since Aristotle, was considered to be basically something that is a function of logical necessity or mystical creation. What did Darwin do? He said you can account for something via a naturalistic understanding of something else. What's that? What are they? All right, what is the name of the book? The Origins of what?
Species.
The Origins of Species via Natural Selection, or the favored status of the select races of the I always forget the subtitle. The Origins of Species, published when? Published when?
Isn't it like
18
1839?
50 something?
1859. Good, Stace. All right. Emerson when? 1831. Sorry, I just screwed it up tonight. 1840. Did I mess it up again? 41 or 30? 1841. All right. And then
I think 1831, it's about the year that he gave the divinity school address at Harvard, which caused them to say, don't you ever come back to you terrible atheist, evil, no good human being.
Right, that's the exactly. Even though he probably was some Unitarian believer, sure, yeah. Good. So again, I'm trying to orientate you here historically. All right, 1841, Darwin, Origin of Species, published 1859. It's coming across the United States, 1860. It was a bombshell. 1861, absolute bombshell. 1841, right? Yeah. Okay. And then 1859 is the publication of Darwin's Evolution of Origins of Species. when is Peirce writing? What are these two articles you read? When did they come out? It's the 1870s. You see it? You see the big, one huge difference with Emerson and Peirce? Wow. Look what this scientist just did. Revolutionize our worldview via basically showing how we can have a probabilistic understanding of what we thought would never, ever could possibly be understood scientifically in terms of probability. All right. And that's pretty much what is incredibly impressive for Peirce. It's 1870. Peirce had been called a student. Yeah, exactly. All right. So the reaction to Darwin is huge, and American pragmatists especially are, and really also British. I mean, it was Spencer who was Darwin's great popularizer, and Spencer was a philosopher as opposed to a trained biologist, taxonomist, which they all were taxonomists really before Darwin, and then you became really biological science. Okay, good. So just know that, all right? The use of science to be able to answer what would have been considered for several thousand years a traditionally and exclusively metaphysical issue. Okay. It's almost like if somebody said, hey, I'm going to give you, let me show you my new paper on the chemistry of the soul. You think, Professor Dunn lost it. Right. That's almost what most of the world was thinking. What do you mean? Probable understanding of the origin of species. We all know that species are eternal and that God created them. There's no other explanation. And what did Darwin do? Yeah, there is. And then, yeah. Okay, good. In 1859, Harvard had the perfect time. Yeah. Harvard had just hired the greatest biologist in the world. I guess, yeah, exactly. He spent his life collecting class. Exactly. All right. Taxonomist, classification. And then after Darwin, an explanatory science.
Right. So at that point, the entire establishment at Harvard was all lined up behind Agassiz, and wanted nothing to do with this crazy Darwin guy. So
exactly.
First, we're seeing a new generation throwing over the way things had always been done before.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic way to put it. And it's a really good use of the story. I totally forgot about it and didn't even make the connection. I appreciate that, John. Exactly. And just think about that in general. And let's go ahead and get into Emerson now, since I think we finished the course description, didn't we? What else we have? Because that is a really good segue into, look, a big part of the American qualification for this course description is our cultural sensibility. And I'll say our, just, I don't want to assume we're all American. I don't want to even assume that we all share the same sensibilities. The point, though, is, there's some things that are more or less more American than some other things which are kind of more or less probably not as American, liberalism and capitalism being one. All right. And let's go with liberalism, capitalism, individualism, self-reliance being one set, and collectivism, communism, whichever, I don't know, worship of authority being another set, whatever. All right. So this kind of taking on the old establishment, this kind of sense of youthful energy, right? You can really feel this in the early pragmatists. They wanted to show our young nation is on the scene now. We have something that, we might have taken from that. We might have taken that, but this is pretty new, right? And we're going to show you how we can, lead the way in doing a very new and novel kind of a thing. There's a lot of feeling of that with pragmatism, especially early and still kind of now, right? Because pragmatism wasn't really the dominant philosophy in this country, at least in philosophy departments, well, until roughly the 1920s. And then while it was for several decades, it actually pretty quickly stopped becoming the dominant philosophy in the 1950s and never really came back, even though it's a distinctly American philosophical movement. All right. It only had about 20 to 40 years of, whichever. I mean, right now, in your own department right here, or Skidmore, here at City College, do you know what the dominant paradigm of doing philosophy is? Anybody? I'm sure many of you know, especially who got serious or going to grad school. What kind of philosophy do most of the faculty members, very representative of at CUNY and at City College? before the Civil War, exactly, Stacy, and we'll talk, William James will be addressing issues about race. And in fact, I've assigned something that's critiquing William James's theory of race. He was very aware of the Negro problem, as he called it. The philosophy of publishing as often as possible. You know, yeah. What, yeah, you gotta,
They're all absorbed. Almost all philosophy departments in the US are absorbed in what I call the dead philosophy of logic and following on to the Russell of insisting that I'd call it defining and redefining things ever more closely so as to say the one tiny true thing that could be said about
I'll give you one word.
a mouse.
Go ahead, Eric. Listen. John?
From my experience, most of the professors have taught like primarily liberalism. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but
I thought you were going to, that's political philosophy. And it's actually true in terms of, you know, I haven't seen any sociological surveys of our profession lately. Anecdotally, from the inside, in the last 15 years, it's really a toss-up between liberalism and Marxism, in my experience, honestly, Eric. But I would say you're probably a point. I've said there's probably a majority of liberals, but this is only political philosophy. I'm talking about the dominant way of doing philosophy in terms of philosophical methodology, which John most very accurately was indeed highlighting. But there's one word for that: using logic to kind of think in terms of, you know, sufficient necessary conditions, which is very much part of the ancient thing. But you have that's very, very modern. With what I'm trying to get you guys to know is the use of formal logic, not just dialectics, but formal logical equations. I mean, I use formalism in my own work, and I'm very much happy to affirm partly my identity is this what I'm trying to get at, but not exclusively. But what I'm trying to, Professor Clow is without doubt representative of this, what I'm talking about. I don't remember any of my other philosophers saying it's called analytical philosophy, buddy. Analytical philosophy. Analytical philosophy. That's correct, Elizabeth. Yeah. Analytical philosophy. All right, still dominant to this day. And that's the Wittgensteinian, Russellian, Frege, and Quine, and Goodman, and early, very, very, very early Rorty. All right. In fact, his first two papers, and then that was it. All right. But we have some on the exactly analytical versus continental, exactly. All right, on the syllabus. All right, good. So are we finally finished with the course description at 4 o'clock? More on political ramification and pragmatism, especially in regards to axiological means value-based, theory of value, axiology. Anything to do with morals, aesthetics, politics, all right? Anything to do with opinion, anything to do with, it's not exactly factual, it's not exactly universal truth, or it's something that is indicating a preference where you have some sense of a difference between fact and value, right? So axiological pragmatism is very much concerned with appreciating value, very much concerned with appreciating opinions, sensibilities, sensitivities. And in fact, a huge part of the pragmatic program, or let's go with the pragmatist program, for much of the 20th century has been arguing against any fact value distinction at all. All right, this is hugely important. Okay, so that ought to take us through the end of the course description. Any questions at all, anybody? All right, Emerson it is. All right, 1841. 1 second. Is it screen sharing or no? No?
Not anything.
Okay, let me get self-reliance up. 1 second. So in the meantime, can someone please give me a sense of why self-reliance is even on the syllabus? What exactly is, I mean, I kind of mentioned a little bit about what's philosophical about it, but I know some of you didn't like reading that much, some of you did, or whichever, or some found it more difficult. Well, why is it on the pragmatist philosophy syllabus? What did you get from that? What was going on in that? I asked the same thing when I first read it in a grad pragmatist seminar with my supervisor, who's a James scholar. And then, yeah, good, Nathan. Yeah, it really is that kind of anti-authoritarian. And you can read that in terms of like philosophical argumentation as anti-dogmatic, right? Sensibility, all right? Individualism, absolutely, Stacy. Exactly. Let's get self-reliance up here and hurry up. We're at 4:02 now. And got dinner plans here, and my brain is already starting to wax materialistic. My stomach, I should say, is starting to wax materialistic about the matter that I'm about to. I go have some Korean food or. All right. That's not the essay. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right, here, I'm going to go ahead and just, I had a different version, but I'll go ahead and project the version on the syllabus. Almost as many neurons. Okay, we have that there. And let me go ahead and share the screen, everyone. Let me know if you're sharing okay here in a second. Is it raining out there? Anybody know? Not yet. Okay. Hopefully it won't be by 4:30. Okay. Where are we? 1 second. Just finding the share screen. I'd rather have this as a PDF. So hold on a second. Just give me another 45 seconds. I'm downloading it as a PDF. I don't want to spend too much time on Emerson, but let's go ahead and finish today with Emerson, or maybe we can get into Peirce. I will say I'm a little concerned that you guys don't have more questions, but okay. Maybe that's a sign of, very well prepared class. The rain's coming at 7, Emma? Yep. Can't get more practical than a weather report. No, I don't know, maybe. All right. Opening this up now. Where are we? Is this screen sharing okay? Is the screen sharing okay? Thank you. You move this Zoom control bar out of the way so I can see it, and then we'll be good to go. If I can move it without that. Okay. All right. 1841, Ralph Waldo Emerson, eminent American man of letters, person of letters. Emerson famous for his transcendentalism, which is partly a romantic or romanticist philosophy, which is celebrating the emotions over kind of pure reasoning. History and the past in terms of the potentials for what we can do in the future. Certain types of values that are kind of against the kind of purely calculative, purely marketplace-based kind of thoroughly scientific, purely utilitarian type of sensibility. Emerson wanted us to celebrate nature and to understand how we can commune with nature and, the universe or whichever. There's a very religious kind of sense of his naturalism, his romanticism, a romantic sense of naturalism, right? But it's still naturalism. So what you're getting here is a lot of the transcendental stuff is it kind of reads like this kind of early, kind of new agey kind of, nature is important, but there's also something kind of mystical about us. You might not be full-fledged religious kind of adherence, but there's something that kind of, goes beyond just the physical. But he's also very much saying that this beyond stuff should be understood in a very natural way. You guys get this is transcendentalism. And they're also taking stuff from Kant, which is, again, the physical universe, is only mediated by our ideal categories of intuition and sensibility. And so, yes, there's a real world. Do not get it wrong. Again, Kant's epistemic idealism, his transcendental idealism, is not an immaterialism at all. In fact, Kant often verges upon basically agreeing with a materialist worldview, except he just doesn't think we can fully understand it without an idealistic epistemology, right? He's no immaterialist whatsoever, right? He just kind of antagonist. He's agnostic. He's non-committal about ontology. He's taking the idea that, primarily there's something about ourselves that are just as important as the whole kind of awe-inspiring majesty of the physical universe. That's a transcendentalism. Let's just go ahead and jump into the text. Okay, everybody? Can someone please read the first paragraph? Let's go with the first half of the paragraph. I'll tell you when to stop. Please go from the top.
I read the other day some verse by an eminent painter, which
Wait a second, though. You got to with feedback. Okay, go ahead, Julia.
sorry. Is it better now?
That's better. Good. Thank you.
I read the other day some verses by an eminent painter, which were original and not conventional. The soul always hears, and the domination in such lines, let the subject be what it may. The sentiment they instill is of more value than any thought they may contain. To believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men. That is genius.
Awesome. Good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Someone please speak up. Speak your. Someone please read from Speak Your. Someone else?
Sure, I can read. Speak your latent conviction, and it shall be the universal sense. For the inmost in due time becomes the outmost. And our first thought is rendered back to us by the trumpets of the last judgment. Familiar as the voice of mind is to each, the highest merit as we ascribe to Moses, Plato, and Milton is that they sat at not books and traditions, and spoke not what men, but what they thought. A man should learn to detect and watch sorry, your screen just adjusted.
Sorry. Is it there now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just threw me off for a sec.
Is it there now, though?
Okay. Yeah, it's good
Okay.
now. A man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes around his mind from within, more than the luster of the filament of bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his thought because it is his. In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come
Good.
back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Great works of art have no more affecting lesson for us than this. Are you saying something?
I was, but go ahead and finish it off.
Oh, sorry. They teach us to abide by our spontaneous impression with good-humored inflexibility than most when the whole cry of voices is on the other side. Else tomorrow a stranger will say with masterly good sense precisely what we have thought and felt all the time, and we shall be forced to take with shame our own opinion from another.
Good. All right. Excellent. So we immediately, in the very first opening paragraph, get a sense of some of the themes in this essay. I mean, some of you already said, "Oh, it's kind of tricky for me." Some of you like reading. You know, look, it's beautiful. I mean, you know, Emerson is a beautiful prose stylist. It's very, you know, certainly not Peirce, right? In terms of, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Peirce is not a beautiful stylist. It's more, it's not, no, the literary quality is completely different. All right. We probably won't get anything like this for the rest of the class. Yeah, Rorty, no, yeah, you know, but what are some of the themes that you get here? We already started talking about them. Go ahead, David.
Well, I guess it's a lot about individualism and just, you know, following whatever thoughts come into your mind rather than, you know, following other people's thoughts or writings.
Good, exactly. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say basically the same thing, that sort of implies that like true knowledge comes from just like one's own experience.
Yep, exactly. All right. So there's a sense in which we can understand this as an empiricism, right? Although it's not exactly sense data empiricism in the kind of classical philosophical tradition, but it is trust your own gut feeling, trust your own intuition, and trust your own senses, right? It might not be at the expense of others, but it certainly is not going to be the others' experiences, sensibilities at the expense of yourself. Lewis, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agreed with everything that was said, and also basically just to not conform, you know, to society.
One. Good, exactly. And that's a good one, because getting into the next couple paragraphs, and please read it if you haven't. All right. The main themes of Emerson's essay in self-reliance are self-reliance, nonconformity, and anti-authority, anti-authoritarianism, anti-authority, maybe. All right, good. Eric, go ahead.
So I wasn't able to finish this one. And so maybe I'm not fully getting it. But like a couple times he mentioned, like, it seemed like he's basically saying that, you know, people shouldn't like feel compelled to like help people in situations that are like basically oppressed people, right? He mentions like poor people, and he's talking to philanthropists, I thought, and saying like that's sort of like, that's basically like not real, like they're or not like legitimate, like their motivations. I think he also mentions like abolitionists, and saying that they were like being mean to the people around them, like implying that their sort of like abolitionist beliefs were somehow not like legitimate. And so I guess the question is like, does his sort of like trust your gut type message, does it does it not take into account how people's you know, guts have also this sort of like social you know, sort of social instinct? And B, is he not taking into account how different like one's position within certain like power structures can affect, you know, their sort of their gut, you know, what seems to them.
It's very good. And you finish it, because you will get a sense of what was happening with those in those passages in this essay. And you're exactly right. You're remembering correctly. However, let's focus on the context here, and let's also focus on the essay as a whole. It is true. In the essay, Emerson will start to say stuff like, why should we be basically slaves to others' feelings, even if there is, you know, a sense in which we ought to feel some obligation of empathy and altruism. He does say something like that. What's going on in that section? Let me go ahead and get to it. But anybody know? And you know, one person I'll mention who, if you understand him, then it will really help you to kind of retroactively understand Emerson. I'm thinking of a German philosopher. Go ahead, Lewis.
Oh, I don't know the philosopher, but I was just gonna go and
German.
say what I think the German philosopher. I just was gonna say what I think Emerson was trying to say in that whole little section about the, you know, not trying to help the poor kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think I understood what he was trying to say, but it does sound a bit, cruel.
Yeah, it
I
does.
think simply what they're trying to say is that they've seen and watched society and they've seen a lot of people around them do these like so-called selfless acts, but they do them more with the intent of being like praised
Hey, yeah.
by other people in society. So it's not truly out of the goodness of their heart. And so they find that, to be kind of uh not right in its way. They're not really trying to like, be more morally higher than the rest of society, but they're just trying to point out those flaws in it, you know?
Absolutely. And it sounds very accurate to me. Anybody else disagree? Emerson, right? Just like the German philosopher that I'm mentioning, who was greatly inspired by Emerson, who wrote in his Nachlass, his notebooks, how wonderful this American thinker is and how wonderful the new American spirit is going to be in the world's history, and how I greatly admire this man, even though I don't read English well, and I read him in translation. I'm sure he is a great, fantastic person. I like him a great deal. One of the few American scholars that this German philosopher referred to explicitly. Who am I talking about? Who does it sound like? Who does it sound like when you get, if you really want to spend your life helping everybody around you, if you really want to spend your life trying to eliminate as much evil as possible, if you really want to spend your life dedicated to the project of trying to be as morally altruistic and as objectively good as possible, but you know what? You're going to be leading a life basically with no room for yourself. Who is that? And how do you see now the clear connection between Emerson and this person? Who am I talking about? Who theorized about the will to power and slave and master morality?
Nietzsche.
It's Friedrich Nietzsche, who adored Emerson. And funny enough, William James, who couldn't stand Friedrich Nietzsche, who said, well, Herr Nietzsche might have some interesting ideas. Sounds like Emerson to me, except that Emerson was an eminently beautiful prose stylist. And Herr Nietzsche writes like, the quote was, Nietzsche writes like, quote, the screeches of a drowning rat. He couldn't stand them. He liked his ideas, but he didn't like all that violence and bloody and warfare stuff. He hated it. But he understood, because what they're doing is something similar. James also has this kind of stuff. They're basically saying, look, first of all, Emerson was an abolitionist, and a very famous and powerful one. Absolutely he was. Emerson was a Northerner who wanted the Union to stay together, but not if it meant compromising with slavery. Emerson was a radical abolitionist. Absolutely he was. Second, Emerson, by all accounts, was personally a very, very kind, nice man. Absolutely. What he's saying here is, see the hypocrisy that you get with everybody pretending look how moral I am, everybody. Look at me, Mr. Moral, Mrs. Moral. Everybody, look how good I am. All I do all day is care about people who are weaker than me. All I do all day is care about people who are less off than me. Look how, and what is Emerson basically saying here, along with Nietzsche? The psychology is weird. I think maybe there's a certain sense in which you want people to remain below you. You want people to suffer and to be in pain and to be less powerful than you. So you can have the power of saying, look at how I had the power to help. Look how I had the power to occasionally toss out a couple things here for the poor and to go and help. And Emerson very distinctly says in that point about slavery and the Negroes, what does he say? He's basically saying, if you act like that, then maybe you ought not to be so concerned with the Negro, because what's happening? Basically, you're just playing up for the audience, basically. Emerson is saying truly individualistic thinking ought to lead enough people as individuals to doing the right thing, which would be anti-slavery abolitionism, right? But you don't have to take my word for it. What do you really like in your own heart? You see, that's Emerson's kind of ethical individualism, right? He does say, it might be conformist to constantly be altruistic, And so maybe there is a sense in which there isn't some semblance of an anti-egalitarian, anti-altruistic moral underthrust to this essay. But, right, he's certainly not going to be talking about affirming your individuality means hurting people and warfare and blah, blah, and rah, rah. He's not like that at all, right? In fact, far less than Nietzsche. Go ahead, John Carlos.
Oh yeah, I was just interested in how kind of this point of, you know, like helping, not trying to be morally superior. But
Yeah.
then much later in the essay, he's basically talking about, you know, having a moral foundation and operating on like kind of first moral principles.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't really talk about much, which I'm assuming he's like, must be universal for everybody, because his readership, he was assuming, was probably Christian, I would imagine.
Yep. White, yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting. Is he also saying like, as long as everybody is tending to their first moral principles, the world will set itself kind of like, all right? Is he an advocate for this kind of ideal?
I believe so. Look, a man is to carry himself in the presence of all opposition as if everything were titular and ephemeral but he. I'm ashamed to think how easily we capitulate to badges and names, to large societies and dead institutions. Every decent, well-spoken individual affects and sways me more than is right. I ought to go upright and vital and speak upright and vital, right? And speak to the rude truths in all ways. If malice and vanity wear the coat of philanthropy, shall that pass? If an angry bigot assumes this bountiful cause of abolition and comes to me with his latest news from Barbados, why should I not say to him, go love thy infant, love thy wood chopper, be good-natured and modest, have that grace and never varnish your hard, uncharitable ambition with his incredible tenderness for Black folk 1,000 miles off, all right? He literally said, the bigot. That's the bigot's individualism. He literally says here, if he comes to me talking about, I love the infant, I love the wood chopper, he's playing about how menial labor. But Emerson happens to know individually, personally, you're an angry guy and you're a bigot. Yet you're up on the stage talking about blah, blah, everybody, help all the unfortunate. That's what Emerson is talking about. He's identifying hypocrisy is what he's doing, just like Nietzsche felt like he was doing. We got some stuff in the chat room, will probably take us to the end of class, all right? I was confused because I didn't think Nietzsche said that there would be no room for yourself. He did not say that. You think I said that about Nietzsche? The overman, the superhuman would not suffer or feel like they were living less. I'm confused about your confusion.
Oh, I thought you were just saying about that there was a German philosopher who said like to live this, you'd have to suffer to live this upright and morally correct life. And I'm like,
yes.
And then you said Nietzsche. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, he actually does say that. And that's why he thinks of us moderns as being sick. That's why he thinks that the vast majority of modern human beings are participating in slave morality or part of the herd. And the overman would not be the vast majority of human beings. In fact, the superhuman would probably be nearly impossible. And if you do arrive at that kind of, I write about the superhuman as a psychological personality type, all right, or a lifestyle aesthetic, all right, but if you want to take it as literal as possible, Nietzsche's quite clear. He doesn't really name them. He just gestures at some great men in history, but Goethe and Caesar and people, but would not suffer or feel like they were living less. The overman has to suffer for Nietzsche and then overcome suffering in order to arrive at a new health. Nathan? So I think I
haven't taken a class on Nietzsche, unfortunately. I only have cursory knowledge of him. So that's like, I'm like confused. Like, that sounds very Kantian to suffer, to have to do the right thing at all times.
It's not suffering because of a subordination of your ego to the universal law. For Nietzsche, it's suffering because it's simply impractical to dominate others constantly forever and in a society. If you want to make yourself a little god, they're going to kill you to try to do so. So, yeah. All right. But he absolutely is. If you can get away with it, knock yourself out dominating others and trying to become that little god. But understand that superhuman is not only the physically dominating, violent person. That's not what the little god is. That sounds like a little demon to most of us, including Nietzsche. But for Nietzsche, the little god would be that humanistic aspect of it, that spiritual aspect, as he calls it, which would be basically be smart, be creative, and lead a life where people think, wow, cool. You have to show you have style for Nietzsche. So for Nietzsche, the suffering is in the act of self-creation, but he absolutely does hope that you have enough power to dominate others, but you have to do it in a way that's very creative. Nietzsche doesn't just only look up to muscle men and barbarian friggin', warlords. He likes poets, authors, musicians, and creatives. And he wants to combine that physical might and strength of body with what he calls the refinement of the soul, which is basically intelligent creativity. That's a combination which leads to Nietzsche's superhuman or Übermensch. Emerson had to be, I saw that quickly and I was distracted for like 10 minutes because honestly, John, I don't know. I knew he was an abolitionist, but I'm Puritan, go forward, you know what I mean? He had to be dragged towards abolition. I didn't know it. By about 1850, he had given up on compromise. Yeah, that much I knew because look, I've read Emerson corresponding with Martin Delaney, but I didn't know he had to be dragged towards abolition. You sure about that, John? Inform me, educate me. I'm surprised at that.
He was against slavery. He just was very cautious and did not want to break up the Union.
Okay, got it. Okay.
While Frederick Douglass would say, and people, and the formal abolitionist movement would say, we ought to secede from the Union, all of us free states, have nothing more to do with the slave South.
Yeah.
He was much more cautious than that. And it was the other people that he knew, the Thoreau family, for instance, were
way more radical.
Way more. Henry David Thoreau's mother and sisters were were close followers of Frederick Douglass.
And Garrison, I believe. Yeah.
And Garrison, right. The two of them would stay with the Thoreau house when they visited.
Yeah, that I knew, yeah. I didn't know this about Emerson, though. I did think he was a radical Republican, not just a moderate Republican, even though the term is a little bit kind of anachronistic. But I guess it sounds to me like you said he's like a Lincoln type, pragmatic Republican, not a radical, but yeah.
Right. Let's say in the 1840s he was. Through the 1850s, much as he hates violence and is worried about everything, he becomes more and more. He likes Charles Sumner, the abolitionist senator from Massachusetts. He's just not he's very cautious about it through the whole thing. But when war comes, we have to do it.
Understood. Thank you for that. Fascinating. Okay. Well, look, everyone. You're right, Stacey. We're getting near the end of class today. So you know what I want to do? Let's just go to the end of self-reliance. All right, really quickly. I'm trusting you to read it, but let's just go ahead and wrap up the last bit. There's a lot to it. Again, main themes: nonconformity, individualism, resistance against authority. I wanted to, if you can give me 5 minutes, okay? Can somebody please give me a philosophy? We already had something that is anti-naturalistic. Can you give me a philosophy or philosopher who is anti-individualistic? Anti-individualistic. Somebody else give me an example of a philosophy that is affirming authority and not anti-authority. And somebody give me an example of something that is more conformist. Good. Confucius is a good one. For two of them, actually, but Nathan, which one are you answering? But it's good for two. Actually, three. Shit. Actually, kind of. Yeah, good. Confucius said, look, I'm sorry, but not everybody is naturally inclined to buck authority. Most people in society should serve their role. Play your position, and that's how society will continue to go along harmoniously. Good, right? How about anti-individualistic? I've got two people in mind. And we've already discussed one. Hell, we kind of touched on another without naming him. Yeah, Eric, you know. Yeah, we've had this conversation, Eric, many a time.
I mean, you know, Engels comes to mind specifically, but for me, but
Karl Marx.
and yeah, Marx.
I mean, look, yeah, you know, it's without doubt there's room for debate. I do not deny that, but it tends to be, you know, Marxist idea, which the two people I had in mind were Hegel and Marx, which his thing is, look, like, along with Hegel, things are systematic, things are holistic. While Hegel wants to say, you know, more fundamentally, reason and consciousness of both materiality. I'm sorry, Professor, I have to, no problem. If you got to go, I understand everybody. I will see you. We're off next Wednesday, right? And this is 2 weeks we're going to miss, right? We're going to see each other again September 13th, correct, everybody? Come on, right? Yes. But also, I'm going to record something in the meantime, all right? So here's what we're going to do. If you have to go now, we'll pick up a purse together. But what I will do, though, is try to record something on purse to kind of give us a head start so that when we pick up on the 13th, we won't be, you know, what does the syllabus have? Oh, geez. We have on the syllabus asynchronous William James. So I'll do Peirce and some of James in a recorded lecture. Then we'll pick up with a discussion of Peirce when we come back together. Okay, everybody? So just to end today, I would say that you have a sense in which, you know, the individual is nothing but a kind of the ultimate kind of, you know, kind of illusionary end product of all these underlying forces, especially when it comes to Hegel, historical forces that are contending for the rationality of understanding truth and falsity of any particular idea in a dialectic. And for Karl Marx, the individual as a product of a confluence of material forces of basically exchange value, all right? Or the exchange value of certain material forces, all right? So, and then in terms of anti-authority, okay, and then anti-individual, okay, and then anti-conformity. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of hard. Kant kind of is a bit of a conformist, to be frank. A bit of a conformist when it comes to his moral and political philosophy, all right? You're not going to get much radical individualism in Kant, even though you are going to get a liberalism, but it's very much a Republican liberalism, which is everybody should understand the state is more important, even though individual rights are important as well. That's liberalism. But the Republican is the state is going to make sure that it can run efficiently with the people as its constituents kind of, you know, elements, as long as the individual realizes it has more of an obligation to the state than the state has to the individual. That's Republicanism. So that's it for today, I guess, everybody. I can go long if you want. I probably have another 5-10 minutes if you want to. If not, we can call it a day. And I will see everybody at 2 o'clock, September 13th. And I will upload the recorded lecture and send an announcement after I finish a discussion of introducing Peirce and getting into James. Okay, everybody? Do we have any questions for the today? Syllabus and Emerson.
Thanks, Professor. Have a great week.
Thank you very much. You have a good 2 weeks, really. And I will see everybody in 2 weeks. Again, it's somewhat unfortunate that we have the 2 Wednesdays off, but I got you. Don't worry. I'll record it. You know, make sure that you read it, or excuse me, you've seen it and heard it before you come back. So we'll continue to be, you know, sharp. All right, when we come back in 2 weeks. Okay, everybody?
Yeah,
And have a good dinner.
I will. Thank you. Sorry. All right, everybody. You guys take care. And if anybody needs to talk to me, just let me know right now. Thank you. Okay.
Enjoy the Korean food.
Well, I'll let you know how it is. I'm going to the one on 101st in Amsterdam. Metzger, I think it's called. I forget what it's called.
Mecha?
You know it. Metzger,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I there's a place in Westport that I go to. It's pretty nice, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, you know. So,
all right, enjoy, Professor.
well, thank you. All right, you guys take care. And you new people, thank you for joining the class. And I'll see all of you and everybody next in 2 weeks. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Have a good 2 weeks. Have a good weekend. Nathan, Kate, you need to speak with me? Nathan, I think I left off something. You're going to say something I mean, I hope not. Nathan, did I address everything that you had in chat? Because I think I was somewhat rushing at the end. And Kate, are you fine? Do you need to talk to me? Are you guys just already gone? Hello, hello. 30 seconds. I'm gonna go ahead and just log off. Nathan, Kate, you guys there?